You are listening to the Enormocast.
We gotta get
Listen, where are you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
big
house. We
place
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold it out.
20,000 seats.
We really should.
The hell are you doing?
I couldn't sleep. I'm checking the ropes. There was a frayed end on your rope, and I'm cutting it out.
Bad weather. No, later, anytime.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is December 20th, about 9 o'clock during the darkest time of the year, here in North America anyway. On today's show, episode 119 of the Enormocast, alpinist, free soloist, free climber, Brette Harrington. Almost Canadian Brette Harrington. A lot of people think she's Canadian. I almost did, but she's not. She's also not related to Emily Harrington, although she could pass as her sister and has been confused as such. And Blake Harrington is a completely different person. And I need to have Blake on the show because it would complete my Harrington triumvirate. The only news I have today, coming into Christmas, our slightly non-commercialized Enormocast, in honor of the fact that Christmas is upon us. No more shopping. No more spending of money as a substitute for love. Yeah, I left the commercials off this one just to clean it up a little bit, you know? Just to get a little focused back in here. The news I have is that I have been invited to the Cody Ice Festival on February 10th through the 12th in Cody, Wyoming. Yeah, the Enormocast at an ice climbing festival, not just hanging around, but I'm going to present, which is a little bit different than the live interviews that I sometimes do at events. This is going to be a presentation on what? Well, not on ice climbing. And when Ari Novak, the director, got in touch with me, I was like, yeah, you've listened to the show, right? And he was clear about my ice climbing bona fides. So I'm going to present on something else. And you'll have to just show up and find out what that is. Maybe it'll be the opposite of ice climbing. I will present on languishing in a bevy of freshly blow-dried Malamute puppies writhing around, trying to lick your face while the sun caresses you in a clover patch of your choosing. That's pretty much the opposite of ice climbing, isn't it? No, but seriously, I have some ideas about a presentation on climbing culture and some of the things I've learned and some of the voices from the Enormocast over the years. Sort of a collective wisdom of all the things that have gone down on the show. Something like that. Hopefully I'll come up with it in a fever dream between now and then. Cody Ice Fest, CodyIceFest.com. No, CodyIceFestival.com. No, CodyIceFest.com. No evil. Just CodyIceFest.com. Go check it out. I'm not even sure what's going on up there just yet. So have a look at the website. Come. Awesome place to go ice climbing, apparently. Although, Jesus Christ, February in Cody, Wyoming? Yeah, that was my only thing. I said, hey, man, is there like going to be a warm place where I can sleep? Do they have indoor plumbing in Cody, Wyoming? I'm going to have to assume that they do. So, and hopefully I will be getting some interviews. Maybe there'll be some Montanans come down out of the icy north. It's about as close to liberal Colorado as they'll get anymore. Okay, let's get to the interview with Brette Harrington. Rad lady, girl, woman, female. I kind of use those words sort of interchangeably. No offense meant. I have utmost respect for her.
No, I was just telling Mayan that I know you're not out to get me. Like, I know you're not a reporter, and you're not.
Yeah, you don't know. You've never met me before,
No,
really.
that's true, but I've listened to the show.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're good. We're rolling. You ready?
Yeah.
We're going to do this. So my first question for you, I'm just going to roll in. Are you Canadian, American, or both?
I'm American. I know. It's different.
Yeah.
People think of me as a Canadian.
I know. I did. And then I read that were you born in California?
In California, yeah.
Yeah, and around Tahoe.
Yeah.
Okay. I read that and I was like, yes.
Uh-huh.
You're kind of like the opposite of, you're sort of the opposite of Peter Croft.
Yeah.
Because he's Canadian, everyone thinks he's American.
Uh-huh.
He's a free soloer, he's blonde, and he's a man.
Yeah.
You're the girl version of Peter Croft.
I like this reference.
You're actually American. Who everyone thinks is Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you lived up in BC?
On and off for 6 years. I went to university up in Vancouver.
Okay.
And then, I just kind of stuck around.
Right.
Yeah.
But you didn't move there with your family. You just went to college there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of looking at your timeline from Tahoe to the Northeast and then to Canada. So I was wondering when those things happened. How old are you?
I'm 24.
24 years old.
Yeah.
And you've been up there for 6 years or so. That's what you said.
Yeah. But like the past 2 years, I don't really live there.
Right.
Because I'm in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I would call it like a home base.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to go to school up there?
So I grew up as a skier. I did ski racing for 8 years. My whole childhood I was a skier. And then I did freestyle for 5 years. And when I was really young, probably like 12, I watched this Warren Miller movie that was featured in British Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
And it just blew my mind. It looked so amazing, the powder and the trees. And then I moved to the East Coast when I went to high school. So jump ahead a few years.
Right.
And when it came time to like apply for colleges, a friend of mine was applying to UBC in Vancouver, and I applied too and got in. And it was my first choice.
And were you still skiing heavily at that point?
Oh, yeah. And I did a few competitions up there in freestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So freestyle, explain that to someone who's not aware of all the genres.
Well, I actually did
Is that like the jumping and...
I did slope style.
Okay.
Yeah, so slope style is different than freestyle, but most people don't really differentiate. Slope styles, jumps, tricks, rails, courses. That I really loved it, but I got too many head injuries, so I had to quit.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
It seems like that sport and whether it's the snowboard end of things in the pipe it seems like there's a difficulty to longevity in those sports. You know, in terms of the who's on top and who's the sort of flavor of the week or whatever, and then they're gone. And I think it all has to do with injury. Like you don't, it just, the sport asks so much of your body that I think it takes a lot to get through to the other side to where you're like, you know, the consummate professional, you know, with the contract that's going to last forever kind of guy.
Right.
Or girl. It's like to get through the other side without completely wrecking yourself seems like almost an impossible task.
Yeah. Well, I think it has to do with taking what you have in a moment and evolving with it.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe when you're young, you're really strong in freestyle skiing and you need to evolve that into something else, or else if you just keep pounding it down, then you're eventually going to get hurt. For me, I just had too many head injuries. Like every time I fell, it seemed like if I got hurt, it would be my head. I never hit anything else. So it was just not the right thing for me.
Right.
But I think for like people that want to pursue it for a lifetime, they need to evolve it into different type of skiing, like alpine, backcountry, doing chutes, or like combining it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Just it's amazing that, like I said, people get through that early stage of their career, and a lot of them don't. You know, something happens and they're out of the running, so to speak. But this is a climbing podcast, so let's talk about climbing.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to kind of get a lot of the details of sort of your beginnings and things like that. You started climbing in Tahoe.
Not really.
No.
I started climbing primarily on the East Coast when I was living in New Hampshire.
Okay. Yeah. See, I wasn't. You just mentioned living there. I guess I leapt to you on Donner Summit, climbing up there or something like that.
Yeah.
But okay, so you started in the East Coast. Tell me about that.
So climbing has been something that I was always attracted. So like my idea of climbing formulated when I was living in Tahoe, and I lived there till I was 15, and that's when I moved to boarding school on the East Coast. But when I was really young, I was like climbing trees every day. I had one special tree that I loved, and I would go bouldering. I didn't even know bouldering was a sport.
Right.
I would just go climbing on boulders, and I was drawn to it. And I went to climbing gym for the first time when I was like 5. And I was fascinated. I saw this picture of someone climbing. Now I think about it, it was probably like Sunny climbing in the desert, some beautiful crack. Yeah, I wondered who these people were. Eventually went to Yosemite with my parents and became fascinated with El Cap.
Right.
And so when I did move to the East Coast, there was a climbing team. I just joined. Yeah. I joined and never quit.
So when you moved, you said you went to boarding school on the East Coast. Yeah. Was it a ski oriented thing?
It was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But they had sort of a climbing, cross training kind of thing. They had some climbers there or was it like a school that drew all sorts of outdoor kids?
It was an outdoor school, but there were like 7 or 8 ski teams and 4 snowboarding teams. So most of the kids that went there were on the ski teams.
Right.
But we were all required to do 3 sports.
Okay.
So climbing was my fall sport, and it wasn't competitive. We just went to Rumney every day and climbed.
Right.
It also didn't, I never learned about climbing culture or media or professionals. I didn't know any about that.
Okay.
It was just climbing because we love it. Yeah.
You climb on the short bus and head over to Rumney to climb every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the name of the school?
Holderness.
Okay.
Do you know it?
No, but I'm sure
How did you
somebody
know
out
it was
there
a
does.
short bus that we climbed on?
Because there's a very similar school in Carbondale called CRMS, the Colorado Rocky Mountain School.
Cool. And
they have tons of short buses. Yeah. Anyway, it's where Hayden went. Actually, I just had Conrad on. He went there too, like way back in the day. But I think probably their skiing, they're like famous for having like these really awesome telemark teams actually. So they've got, it's sort of a little more hippie probably than what was going on up with you guys, but they've got a climbing team, kayak team, the whole thing. So that's
Sweet.
how I know what kind of can maybe envision a little bit of what you were doing up there. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so you took to it.
Yeah.
And you're still competing as a skier.
Yeah.
And so that was still like your focus.
Well, it was my focus, but I loved climbing more than I did skiing. So that, joining this team helped me realize that. And I also had this amazing coach who believed in me. And he
climbing?
Climbing coach. He gave me my first climbing rope.
You want to give him a shout out?
Yeah, Travis Piper. Thank you for encouraging me to continue climbing. And that helps as a high school student to have somebody encourage you to keep pursuing it. Yeah. But
was there any sort of internal conflict that you had with being on what I imagine was a very oriented path with skiing? If you'd gone to a school kind of specifically for that, I'm sure they were probably pumping out people that were going on to be athletes. Those schools tend to, whether it's an Olympic path or competition. You're on this one path and a lot of things in your life are oriented towards that, but you have this love of climbing.
Yeah.
Was it ever unclear as to what might happen in terms of your pursuits? Or
So after boarding school, I moved to Spain, and I didn't get to ski so much when I lived in Spain. I lived in the south of Spain. So I would leave the city. It was Granada. I lived in Granada, and I'd leave the city, take a bus up to the mountains and ski, but it was twice a week.
Right.
And it wasn't that much. And I did a few competitions out there, but I got to climb a lot more. And then I moved back to BC, and I did a few competitions, but I got a really serious concussion that lasted about 3 months, and it affected me severely.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. I just had to quit, like,
right
then and there. Yeah. And I backcountry ski, but I don't ever go in the park anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better for your health.
Yeah, well, like, for sure, that was really bad.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, was it like touch and go in terms of being something that would be permanent?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
And I've had effects, like, beyond that, because I'll tell you the truth, is that it triggers depression.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're depressed, you don't have emotion. You don't experience happiness, sadness. You basically lose your personality, and you forget a lot of things, so you don't realize that you're in depression. It's just like you're in this lifeless body, like you're dull, and you can't see out, and you don't think you're ever going to be able to get out. And so finally I started putting it together. Like, I started coming out of that. It took me about 3 months. And then I'd say 2 years, maybe 3 years later, I fell back into it, and it lasted about a month. And so, yeah, it's like lasting, definitely.
Right. So that could maybe even come up, I mean, over time again.
Yeah. And there's been tons of studies relating depression to concussions.
Okay.
And a lot of sad suicides. People, get lost in what's happening because you can't see out.
Mm-hmm. So when it happened the second time, was a part of you, was there an intellectual part of you that was able to be like, wait, is this what I learned about before, or is it just you just don't have a perspective on it? Yeah,
when you're falling into it, you're like, I was aware that I was falling into it, and I told my mom and I told my boyfriend, like, I'm not myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the scary thing is you don't know if you're ever going to come out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And was it something that passed, or did you have to do something about it?
No, it passes randomly. Like,
okay,
it came in randomly and it fell out randomly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All of a sudden I just felt good, and I'm like, oh, I'm good.
All right, we'll go climbing again.
Yeah, well, like, I was climbing, like, I sent the Grand Illusion while I was in my depression.
Okay.
which was cool for me. I wasn't, like, super psyched, though. Like, it wasn't honest, but it was like, all right, at least I can still do this,
like, perform.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's something like the detachment was able to, like, I don't know, who knows? You know, when you said when you first described it, you said this emotional detachment, and I leapt to free soloing because it seems like there has to be some level of that. How long ago was that? That was 2015. Okay. Yeah. So not too long ago. The spring of 2015. Right. Yeah. Going back to learning to climb, you actually were on a climbing team, but it was an outdoor thing. Yeah, it was more like a club. Like a club. It was like a club. Yeah. That's what I'm kind of getting at, because a lot of times when people think climbing teams now, it's like a gym thing. Yeah. But it was oriented towards the outdoors. Yeah, we didn't climb indoors. And then was it, this kind of thing where they were training you up to to become a climber on your own, or was it more of just like, have at the rocks and we'll make sure you guys are okay? What kind of program was it? Well, there was only 6 of us. Okay. And we had one coach and then one guy that would come in and out. And they were like really like chill. Yeah, no pressure, just follow what you want to do, and it was really open and relaxing. We didn't have any training regimens or anything. Well, when I'm asking about training, that was a little bit the wrong direction to say that, because everybody jumps to like physical training, having you guys hammer the campus boards and things like that. Yeah. What I kind of meant was, were they teaching you the ropes? Were they teaching you how to place gear? Were they teaching you about anchors or any of that sort of stuff? Like, we would go trad climbing, but we'd only second. Mm-hmm. Like, I never led trad when I was out there. But we did some really cool multi-pitch climbs. We climbed a 3-pitch tower called the Eaglet. That was like my first time climbing cracks. Mm-hmm. It was a 5'9" crack, and it was awesome. But yeah, I never led. I don't really even know if I ever led sport climbing.
back then either.
Right.
I didn't understand the point of it because I was just climbing for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to like understand the game of red pointing and understand the more competitive side.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you sort of throw that switch to want to become your own climber, so to speak, and gain the knowledge to go out and do sort of your own things? Because I can imagine that in a club or a team like that, it was definitely, directing you. Here's some stuff you might like. Here's this. Here's this. And you even said like you had no idea about climbing culture or anything, or what red point was, or you were like blissfully just out there climbing, which is like pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
When did you sort of make a switch to wanting to become your own climber and pursue your own things and also learn how to climb?
Yeah, it was during that time. Like I directed myself there as I had been when I was younger to like trying to climb climbing trees just because I loved it. So like, yeah, I was always directing myself towards climbing. It wasn't like I was ever taught or led into it. And so, yeah, my coach encouraged me to keep going. And then I, from there, went to Yosemite with a friend. We had no idea how to climb in the valley, but we were like 17. And then, I just kept wanting to push it harder and harder. I just wanted to climb as best I could.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And how did you go about learning, not to kill yourself in terms of like anchors and gear and all that sort of thing?
Oh, man. I just did trial and error, really.
Right.
Like, this is trad climbing? It's not much different than sport climbing. And, I was living in Squamish when I started trad climbing. Mm-hmm. And there was this 10D, and I could easily climb 10D sport. So I was just like, I'll climb it. And it was basically like a free solo because I don't know if that gear would have held. But my partner didn't realize that I didn't trad climb, and I didn't say anything. Then we went climbing on the Chief, and we climbed this route called Milk Run, and there was this 11A corner. And he asked me if I wanted to lead it, and I said, sure. So I led it. And I understood the concept of cams. I just hadn't had practice. So I wouldn't recommend this tactic to anyone who wants to lead trad. I did it, and I would say it's better to start with like having someone teach you.
Did you fire that 511?
Yeah, I did. I fired it, and I got to the top.
That's the difference.
It was kind of
like you didn't fall, so who knows whether those cams were any good or not.
I know. Well, Mark, my partner, was like, "Well, it was a little weird that I placed a black alien as a first piece." Right. Like, yeah, I guess so.
Like, wow,
when it was like
she's tough.
a hand.
She's not even scared.
Yeah. But I really caught on to it fast because I loved it, and I wanted to climb high. I like going high. And
so I can imagine that as an athlete, as a mountain athlete, as a person who's skiing and everything else, physically it probably felt, you were probably just right off the bat pretty strong, pretty capable in terms of being on the rock.
Yeah, I was comfortable climbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although crap climbing was different to me, like the laybacking of that style.
So did your folks have some idea of this path that you were on in terms of like, again, that you had this sort of desire inside of you to be a climber versus being a skier per se or anything else? What'd you go to college for?
Spanish.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
In literature.
Okay. Did you finish?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
I always ask my guests that when they talk about college.
Yeah.
Just to find out if they hung it out long enough to get a degree. Good job.
Thanings. Yeah.
Nice.
It was a fun degree. Yeah.
But yeah, were they aware of this climbing thing?
I would tell my mom, like my mom and I we've always been pretty close. So she was aware of it and pretty happy for me.
Okay.
She's a pretty stable-minded lady and really comfortable. My dad has and still does have a very hard time with it.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of fearing for your safety, or that you should be pursuing something more lucrative or like
both.
Contributing to society kind of thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's gotten better in the past few months.
Yeah, few videos come out and some articles.
Yeah.
Goes a long way to legitimize things in parents' eyes. I know this from my own past.
Okay.
A little mention in a magazine back in the day. Yeah, then it seemed like you were doing something important all of a sudden, even if like you didn't have any money.
It doesn't matter about the climbing. It's like, what, yeah.
Yeah, so recognition is a bit for that. But in terms of the safety thing, let's move in. I'm going to actually ask you, because of that conversation about, maybe your dad being a little worried about your safety. Especially, if he's been around for concussions and...
He wasn't, though.
Oh, he wasn't?
No. For some reason, when I started getting concussions, I don't know, he wasn't there.
Okay.
And then I was on the East Coast, and he wasn't there. And then I was in Vancouver, and he wasn't there. I don't even know if he knew.
Oh, okay.
I know my mom knew, because I would tell her.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think he knew.
All right. Okay.
I still don't even know if he knows.
Maybe he'll listen to this, be like, oh my God. Well, anyway, moving on to that. So let's talk about the soloing. Yeah. So somewhere in your sort of path, the soloing became a thing. I've always said that at least among guys, because I can only talk for guys when it comes to some of these internal things. Although I try to talk for women too, let's face it. But in this case, it's like, I always say, if you're a dude who trad climbs a lot, then at some point you're going to dabble at least in soloing. And some people are going to do it a bunch. Some people do it always. Some people will dabble and then scare the shit out of themselves and stop or whatever. But there's going to be this point for most dudes anyway that go into free soloing. Do you think that's the case for you, that it just kind of turned up as something that like seemed natural to do, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, this is a good question. So what happened to me specifically was I was going to do an alpine route in
Your partner bailed.
My partner bailed?
No.
No, I was going to do an alpine route in British Columbia.
Okay.
We were going to climb the North Pillar of Joffre, and the approach was, we crossed a glacier, and then we had to jump from the glacier to the rock and cross this gully, and right away there was rock fall down the gully, and it was too dangerous, honestly, to set up a belay and to belay each other up. We just had to solo up. It was like 5'9" terrain to cross the gully. Fortunately, we did that. I'll tell you why later. But we did continue climbing the easier pitches, just soloing. It's faster, more efficient. And then you get to the crux pitch and then you put on your rope. And I was so psyched. Like, I just thought it was amazing. So then we put on the rope, climbed, I think it was like 5 pitches or maybe 4 or 5 pitches, and got to a tower, and this massive rock fell down the gully that we were on about 3 hours earlier and took out the glacier below. So, I mean, it was good that we were fast and efficient. Probably
right.
Like that route hadn't seen a repeat, I don't think. And I think we were off route too. So it was pretty adventurous for us to be up there. We only brought a single rack of cams. It was like 511X climbing. It was a really intense route. Still one of the most intense alpine routes I've done. Mm-hmm. And then we got to the top, and there was this huge thunderstorm that was coming. And so we just like down scrambled the 4th class terrain super fast. And I thought it was one of the best experiences I'd ever had at that moment.
Okay. So
then every time we'd go into the mountains, like after that, we would go alpine climbing every weekend and do lots of soloing. Yeah. I did a solo up a mountain called Lydia at night. And it was like I think it was like a 6-hour climb. Mm-hmm. Just it's like 4th class terrain in the top. It had some 5.8. And yeah, soloing for me developed in the mountains just out of efficiency, time management. And then you can get to the harder pitches, and yeah, it's just way more efficient. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but tell me about after you figured out that it was way more efficient. Mm-hmm. So what, in terms of, when you're not necessarily needing to be efficient, you're still going to go solo something, whether you're cragging now or whatever.
I started realizing I could climb these mountains, without a rope.
Right.
And I was in the Waddington Range and did a bunch of soloing there, and then I went to Patagonia, and it wasn't my idea to go soloing, but it was in my head because at the time I loved alpine scrambling. That was just fun to climb mountains super fast up these cool features. And so, yeah, like I was in Patagonia climbing with partners. And then eventually just did some soloing too.
Right. Well, you got some press, and this is actually where I first kind of noticed your name or whatever and saw the pictures. What's the name of it again? The
Chiaro di Luna.
De Luna, yeah. And so I had a question about that. Again, like that's when I think a lot of people were like, wow, who's this gal that's like, that just soloed this route, free soloed it. Had you actually, that was on site as well?
No, it wasn't on site.
Okay, it was not on site. All right, that was my question.
Yeah.
It's 5'11", yeah?
Yeah.
Like some finger cracks?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when I was kind of like, well, gosh, it didn't make it clear the video I watched or anything, and I was like, man, that's serious business. 5'11", free soloing in the mountains, and then I was like, wow, that's really serious if it was on site. And you had climbed it once before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had basically team scrambled it with a partner, and we put on the rope for a few pitches, but after I did that, and we did it in like 3 hours, so I realized that I could just solo it. But it still, like, that was the most intense free solo I've ever done with mental preparation. Like, I thought about the entire route. I processed it, visualized all the emotions I could have felt beforehand that night when I was sleeping, and like, yeah, I knew going into it I was going to be okay because I'd already processed everything. Okay.
Where'd you learn to do that?
There. Doing, like, just on site. Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't drawing on anything from like your competition days or anything. You were just like, I think this is how I should process this stuff ahead of time.
I just started really thinking about it, and like, yeah, I got so into it, and it was cool.
Like projecting and the whole thing of thinking about like...
I climbed the entire mountain in my head like 3 times that night. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get scared at all in your visualizations?
I was gripped because some of the pitches are hard.
Well, yeah, they're 5'11".
Yeah. There's this one pitch at the top that was like when I climbed it with a rope, I couldn't place anyway, and I really wasn't going to place because I was planning on soloing it anyhow. Okay. But it was insecure. It was a flared layback that kind of barn doored out. And so in my head, I like readjusted my body positioning and like felt how it would feel climbing it. And then when I finished visualizing that, I was like, okay, well, I think I can do this. But I have never had to do that since then. Okay. With soloing. Okay. I've done it with like red pointing and stuff, but yeah. Well,
that's an amazing skill, actually.
I don't even know
if you just made it up on the spot. Because what I would do is I would do that, and then I would get so scared I'd have packed up in the morning and went home. I'd have been like, okay, well, that was too frightening to even think about.
That was a special climb.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And did you, speaking of that thing I talked about all dudes wanting to solo at one point, I did. I've been through my momentary thing. I never pushed it past 5'9". And... so I started thinking about doing my own version of what you did in your shoes. And I'm like, would I be climbing up like all the base, like the scrambling and like getting, like you said, most of it's like not that big a deal. And then you put down when you climbed it with a partner, you put on the rope for those few pitches. Would I be approaching those pitches like freaking myself out, thinking about them? Or would I be able to just be like, no, I it's not a big deal? And I kind of concluded, at least at this point in my life, because I don't really do that stuff anymore, I would have freaked myself out. Like, I would have been just like, well, what about that one jam? Like, that felt terrible for a second when I moved off of it or whatever. So, but you're able to, like, you were just in it when you left the ground on that one?
I was. Yeah, it had rained the night before.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was... So... I woke up at like 10 and it was just fog everywhere. I couldn't see. And then I waited till 12 and then I started up and I was really careful. I felt super calm that day. And after I finished climbing the first crux, I got really happy. Okay. And then I climbed the second crux, which is the most technical crux. And I have like little video clips I took of myself like afterwards, like, yeah, I'm so psyched, so good. Yeah, it was just a really good day, but it's not always like that. Right. Yeah.
Have you freaked yourself out other times?
No, not freaked out, but I've been in situations that I have seriously had to focus. Yeah, I can think of 2 instances that triggered that. Like, it's not okay to enter any kind of freak out headspace. Right.
Well, yeah, I guess if you freaked out, you probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And that's happened.
But spots you climbed into that you suddenly maybe... When you say you had to focus, what does that mean? Can you sort of deal with that?
I was climbing a few months ago, and I was soloing this route. It was 12 pitches, and about pitch 7, it led me onto a slab.
Okay.
And this route wasn't done very often. It's in a place that's hardly traveled in Calaveras Dome. And the slab was really technical, and I wasn't expecting it to be as technical as it was. And so if you're a climber, you know what's like climbing slab. It's insecure, and you have to be like precise on your movements. And so I could tell that somewhere in my head there was this thought like, this is so intense. Like, but I also knew there was no way out of it besides to control what I was doing and to control my head. So I didn't even allow myself to slip into that, and I just kept climbing. Yeah, I think it just has to do with blocking out any sort of negative thoughts. Yeah.
How hard was the climbing there, you think?
I was like 5'8".
Right.
I don't know though, like 5'8" slabs sometimes can be really hard.
Well, I was just kind of thinking, like, at times, whether I'm on a rope or whether I was not with the rope, you know, I often was just like, come on, like, you can climb this. Like, unless you're off route, you can climb this. Like, we know how hard it is. There's going to be a hold. You know what I mean? Like, I can think of those conversations that I've had with myself, but yeah, that voice, like, that can be back there. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the difference, is that you have this ability to tell that voice to shut the fuck up or go away or like beat it, you know, in the moment. But it's nice to hear you have the voice.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, like, I've down climbed so many times also. I do a lot of down climbing when I'm not feeling comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, the voice has to be there.
Like, if I'm ever stressed out, when I was in university and I would try and go soloing, it was not a good place for me to be, so I would just down climb. You couldn't clear your head enough, or? Yeah, it's stressful, university. Right. Yeah. Right. And so this remains like a big part of your life in terms of, you know, you kind of mentioned, we were conversing earlier, that there's phases, and you had a good phase in the spring. So what about that headspace between being in a place where you're like, soloing is what I want to do now, and then moving away from it? Yeah. The switch is a bit hard, because once you get into something, you get really good and comfortable in it. So, for example, I was doing a lot of soloing over the summer, and then I had a project in Yosemite. I wanted to go climb El Cap, and I needed to change my headspace, and I needed to change into the try hard headspace. Yeah. It's not easy because I kept wanting to go soloing, but really, like, when you're doing a project, I don't know how really to describe that switch. Yeah. This summer you were climbing on El Cap as well? No, that was in the fall. Yeah, it was when you were climbing. When did you climb up there with Alan, with our buddy Alan? That was the fall of the last year. So that was in 2015. Yeah, right. And then 2016 I was on El Cap again. What were you doing this year? El Corazon. Oh, okay. How'd that go? It was awesome. Yeah, I freed all pitches except for the final like up to pitch 30. But I was doing it ground up, so I hadn't rehearsed anything, and I had to figure out this. Pitch 18 was like this really hard slab traverse. It's called the Beak Flake because Alex Huber placed a bird beak and then did a massive dyno to stick this crux, and then it's like 512, 513 climbing to the top. But I couldn't do the dyno. So I spent 3 days trying to figure out the sequences. So that took me a lot of time. And also my partner wasn't climbing at the point, so he was just jugging. So I didn't end up freeing the route, but I got really close. I freed majority of it. Yeah. Do those sorts of things
bother you enough that you have to go back?
Oh, I will go back for sure.
Awesome.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's stuck in your craw, as it were.
And it's an amazing line.
Okay.
And now I have it dialed. Like I want to try it in a faster time now.
Okay. And what did you do with Alan?
Mirror wall.
The mirror wall. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how did that go?
That was great. Yeah. It was chaos, actually. It was chaos because we'd never climbed a wall in that style, and there was 3 climbers plus one guy up there trying to video, and it was just like chaotic trying to get the hauling systems down.
Sure.
And also to have 4 people at an anchor was not helpful. So we learned a lot. Yeah.
It sounds like your patience tried a little bit.
It was.
Based on the tone of your voice.
Yeah, we learned a lot.
And did you go up on El Corazon, just 2 people?
Just 2.
Yeah, right on. Well, it's part of being a public figure. You got to catch it on video. So.
Well, we didn't do any video for Corazon. We just went up.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, you might as well not have done it then. So tell me a little bit about your Baffin trip too.
Yeah, so we went to Baffin in June. And it was June 21st when we actually went into the fjord. We were climbing on the east coast in the fjordlands. And it was a summer solstice. So the sun just revolved 24 hours. That was really cool. And we climbed 2 new routes on Great Sail Peak. I think that's 1,100 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that right? No. You need to help me out on this.
I don't know. Forget about it. We'll skip that. Who cares? It's big.
You can cut that out.
Yeah, I'll cut that out. It's really big. Yeah. No one gives a shit. Yeah. If you're going to say meters, then you just lost everybody anyway.
I'm lost anyway.
They're like, meters? What? She said she wasn't Canadian.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
1,100 meters. That's it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, we climbed, we established a new line up the lower half of the wall that was 7 pitches at 12B. And then we traversed this huge ledge and climbed a line up the northwest turret of Great Sail Peak. That goes at 13A, A2. We had planned on trying to free climb it all, but this huge cyclone hit the valley that we were in during our climb, and we were going ground up. So our week of supplies ran out because we were in the cyclone for 6 days, and it was super windy, and our ropes froze, and it was snowing on us. And so on day 7, we decided to go up, and it was drizzling out and raining. Mark burnt his foot, so he couldn't climb. So Josh and I just took all the blocks. And
who were the other climbers?
It was Mark Andre, Josh Levine, and I.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did he burn his foot? Stove?
Yeah. The jet boil.
Right. Water? Burned it with
hot water?
Burned it
with hot water in the morning. Yeah. Right. He had some injuries on that trip.
Okay.
Yeah, poor Mark couldn't climb so much. Josh and I had a good time.
Nice. Tell me what it was like. So you're in Portaledges.
Yeah.
Or a Portaledge.
2
for 6 days.
Yeah, in the storm.
Yeah, just like chilling, hardcore.
Oh no, because the next pitch that we were working on was the crux pitch, and it was a aid pitch.
Right.
And so like Mark and I would take turns during calm. When it wasn't super windy, we'd take turns aiding this pitch on hooks. And actually, I placed a copperhead. It was pretty run out. Right, I started up pretty run out right from the portal edge, like 30 feet on hooks.
Right.
And finally, I found this really good copperhead seam, and I hammered in a copperhead, and I was testing it, and I thought it looked pretty good. And I stepped down in my aider to test it, and my hook blew. So I took a static ball onto my copperhead.
And it held?
And it held.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It was like, whoa, did anyone see that? And it was totally fine. And then I kept going, and I felt confident that I had a placement.
Yeah. And you would have just what?
I would have fallen so far into the portal edges, it would have been horrendous.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Nice job.
Thanks.
Had you placed a lot of copperheads in your time?
No, just practicing.
Just practicing.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, they're bomber. Don't worry about it. It's all pro. Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks.
But so you were like, what, getting in a few hours a day on this pitch, day after day, or what?
Yeah, but also the wind was super strong. So like at times we were just trying to hold the portaledge down as the winds were like Josh was in a single ledge and his flipped a few times on him, really freaked him out. So yeah, we were just trying to like hold everything together a lot of the time.
Right.
Cooking was super hard.
Right.
There's no gas canisters in Baffin, so we only had a white gas stove.
Okay.
Which was also probably pretty dangerous to have in the windy portaledge set. Yeah.
Yeah, they can flare up.
Yeah, I know. I got my eyelashes singed off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I've been just kind of having you sort of do your greatest hits from the last couple years. You're stuck in these ledges in Baffin, holding the portaledge down. You take this very, fortuitous whipper onto a copperhead. You're free soloing. So elsewhere. And you mentioned your little panic voice, or your voice that said, started to kind of get in the back of your head on that slab. But the funny thing is like you're laughing with me through all these or just recounting all these basically terrifying moments, pretty matter of factly. Is that like are you in these portaledges for 6 days with the wind blowing, like totally fine? Do you have, are you nervous? Do you have that kind of effect, or are you just like, I just took a whip on a copperhead, I'm good? Like,
I wasn't terrified. No. I've had moments when.
I mean, I'm not asking like terrified, but like
we were having a great time. You just don't seem
to have like a lot of sort of nervous energy, if you will.
No, I wasn't nervous. I was actually really psyched. I had this like amazing book I was reading. I told you about the weather atmosphere book. So I was reading about the cyclone, and it was cool watching the cyclone go down valley from the east. It shot super fast. The wind came in from the east, and then the snow hit, and then we had like a day of sort of stable weather as the eye circled over us, and then the next day snowed again, but the winds had changed as the cyclone passed through us, and the winds were shooting from the west of valley. Yeah, so I don't know, I was just more fascinated.
Right.
Yeah, it was cool. And each night, like, the fog layers would roll into the valley, and I was reading about how the fog was like being pressurized, and yeah, it was cool.
Have you always been this person? Like from a kid? I mean,
I think
have you
so.
always been like pretty steady?
There's moments.
I mean,
when
other
I'm like,
than we talked about the concussion and the ups and downs with that, but in terms of your personality, it seems like there's some magic here in terms of your ability to, just either, if you want to call it, stay focused or stay calm, or just executive functioning. This is what we need to take care of here and now. Is that something that you grew up with? Is it something you were taught? Something that came with climbing?
Okay, I think it has to do with just who I am.
Okay.
Like, I've always been really independent. I did a lot of stuff alone when I was like a little kid. Most of the time I would be off doing something alone, and so I think I've found peace in that. I don't know how to explain it, but I just think it's just who I am. But then when I get stressed out over like school or work, or there's certain things that stress me out, or lack of sleep. That's a huge one, or being sick, and then I lose my headspace, and then you could find me like, I don't know, having a tantrum.
Okay.
When I'm not feeling good, I can lose my head.
Right. Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah. I have an older brother and an older sister.
You close with them?
Yeah, we're close.
Where are they? Did they all learn these skills as well growing up?
No. We're all so different. Like,
oh, really?
My sister is opposite.
Okay.
From me. She's very, very different. My brother, we're more so similar, but he's pretty quiet.
I sort of talked to you about, this path, or this idea of, especially someone who's only 24, you kind of came into climbing in the gym era, the sport climbing area, the bouldering era are the things that are like the draw for teenagers.
Yeah.
I think in terms of climbing, you had a little bit different progress in terms of that outdoor climbing team or climbing club, while 1,000 other young girls at the time you were a kid would go towards the social path or towards because sport climbing, bouldering, all those things we talked about on the show are very social activities as much as anything for young people. And maybe your team was that, obviously, but there's only 6 of you guys, as you said. But, I was just kind of curious how that girl ends up this woman who is this alpine climber, this wall climber, this like steady Eddie go-to partner in terms of doing these big routes. And so that's kind of just, I'm just sort of like delving around in your psyche, trying to figure that out, I think, because it's a little bit unusual in the day and age.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's 1,000 people that would have gone the other direction for every one that finds themselves up in the big mountains, especially for women.
Yeah, like the social part of climbing was never, and it still isn't, part of my climbing. That's why bouldering was so hard for me. I didn't learn to boulder until I just did it alone, and I boulder much better when I'm solo. I think I function better when I'm alone.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think I was never attracted to that sort of scene.
So you're about to embark down to Patagonia with Mayan. We're actually at Mayan's house.
Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out because she's letting us.
Thank you, Mayan.
I actually trapped her in a house in Grand Junction too, so she's reliving her own experiences right now. We're in Grand Junction, Colorado, which is also cool. But you guys are about to head down to Patagonia again. Tell us about that mission.
So we're headed down to Torres del Paine and to try a climb called Riders on the Storm. And Mayan was down there last year with Ines, and they nearly freed the entire route. But there was some sections of aid, and they spent I asked her earlier, but just a few days maybe working and finding a variation that would go. And then they climbed to the top but didn't end up sending the pitches, but found a way that would possibly go. So yeah, she's invited me, and I feel very honored to go down with Mayan and try this route.
Yeah, but I made a joke earlier when we got here that you've been bred. You've been like you've been sort of put together in a lab for this trip.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, like your climbing career, it seems to me is step by step like readied you for this moment.
Oh, that's sweet.
Don't you think?
I'm psyched for that. Yeah.
I mean, you're a granite trad climber. Okay. You've got big wall experience. You can climb in the cold, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly like who would be a better partner for her than you?
I don't know.
I know it's putting a lot of pressure on you.
That's why I'm psyched on this project, because it is something that I really wanted to do. When I read the article that came out, I think in the Alpinist magazine last year, about their climb, and I was just like, I thought that would be so amazing. Yeah. Well,
and I imagined it, like, because you guys have got to haul in a bunch of crap back in there. And then I also just imagined you like can put a giant haul bag on your back and just walk and walk and walk, can't you?
Oh, I hate it. I hate that. Yeah. Trekking with heavy backpacks is not my favorite thing to do.
Well, it's nobody's favorite thing.
Yeah, I do it. it.
Yeah.
I'm not that great at it, though.
Okay.
No.
All right. Maybe I'm mischaracterized you. I've given you a little bit too much there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just had this like steely-eyed gaze ahead, like trudging along. Like there's no one's gonna stop me. This is happening. No.
Well, that's probably my least favorite part of the whole thing. Yeah, like every time it's like, oh God, we have to carry these bags in.
Right.
It's gonna be hard. Yeah.
Well, hauling on El Cap must not be that high up there in your favorite things to do.
Well, this last time we found out a really nice system is just to do space hauling.
Yeah.
So we're just like 2 people counterweighting the back and just it's awesome.
Yeah.
So basically, you just jug the line twice. That's how it goes.
Totally.
Yeah.
That was all something you had. Nobody had bothered to tell you about on the other one when you had 4 times as much shit.
I had always thought about it, and I wondered why we never did it. Yeah.
Would you do the little squat thing?
Yeah.
Or pushing with your legs?
And we set up 3-to-1s, and it was so awful. Yeah.
All right. That's cool, though. You got to do those things, though. You got to cut your teeth like that.
Yeah.
Because now you know better.
Yeah.
Now you fucking know better. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
I do want to kind of point out how it got done. Is that I Instagram stalked you.
Yeah.
Actually, Brett put a post on about climbing Indian Creek, and I was like the first comment. Was like, hey, are you going to come to Colorado? And then she got back to me. But then you deleted that comment.
Yeah, because you made me feel self-conscious about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're like, well, maybe we shouldn't be writing on your commentary. And so I was like, okay, I'll just delete it.
Oh, because I put my my information on. Well, I just didn't want to put my phone number on there.
Yeah, that's
why.
fair.
So I put it into the did you know Instagram had messaging before that? Because
yeah,
I've had vague knowledge of this messaging thing.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn about that too.
Right. So anyway, but you were totally awesome. You got back to me, and I drove out here to Grand Junction to get it done, and I totally appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed it and haven't been too put out by it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this has been awesome. Thanks for talking with me.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thank you so much to Brett for doing that. I really did kind of stalk her out of nowhere. Just threw the line out there, you know? Little flick of the wrist and hooked her. So I do work hard for you guys to get some folks from outside Colorado once in a while. And here's wishing Brett and Mayan a safe and successful trip down to Patagonia. They'll be leaving not long after this comes out. All right, have a great new year. Please stay safe on that and any other day and night. And as we go into the new year, re-up your dedication to climbing safe and coming home in one piece from your adventures. And of course, always checking your knot and everyone else's too.
How to be a Canadian. Step 1. Understand the metric system half of the time.
Welcome back to Who Wants to Win $1 Million, eh? Are you ready for your final question?
Yeah, let's give her.
For 1 million Canadian dollars, how much do you weigh? In kilograms. Is it A, 40, B, 80, C, 65, D, 200?
Oh, I don't know kilograms.
Now remember, you can earn a bonus lifeline by listening to one Nickelback song in its entirety.
I think I'm gonna walk.